Let's start with the first topic, extending Microsoft Dataverse. So in this section, we would be talking about introduction towards Dataverse for developers, and we would also learn how to create a plugin. So for Dataverse extensibility, let's understand this picture. So basically, using this picture, you would be able to understand the complete architecture here. So you know that Dataverse is what? Dataverse is a software as a service platform, and most of the data is there itself available, right? So it provides you a kind of persistent data, right? Just a moment. Okay, so persistent data. On the top of persistent data, it provides you the rules and logics. So you can implement the rules and logics with the help of calculated field, roll-up fields, business rules. These all options are available. In addition, you can make use of event framework. You can make use of dotted assemblies, which are plugin, which we are going to start. And we can even have custom connector on the top of it. It provides a security layer, right? It provides us authentication and authorization. In respect to authentication, we have Azure AD or Auth v2 available, and authorization perspective, we have learned about security roles. Then we have also talked about the schema concept, right? It provides multi-currency support. It provides entity relationship. It is rich in metadata. So if you are interested to have a custom table, you can create custom table also. And that is all getting stored on Dataverse, right? So if we talk about here further, it also provides us APIs to interact outside. It is app source enabled as well, and it is solution aware also. So if you are looking for a particular table to be grouped under a solution, you can make it possible as well. So all these implementation is there in Dataverse and gives you the extensibility with respect to the .NET assembly plugin, custom connector, and you can look for Azure AD, or you can have APIs. So these all options you can look for the extensibility purpose. So as are more focused towards .NET assembly plugins, let me help you to understand plugin. Basically, plugins are managed code classes that are registered to you to run when specific events occurs. So basically, web services provide a programmatic interface for applications and services to access business data, organization information, and metadata that is stored in Dataverse. The main service to access business data is called organization service. So there are two protocols which are available for application code to access this service, each with its own web endpoint, which are OData and SOAP. So a RESTful Web API provides access to the OData v4 protocol of the web service, while SDK provides a library of classes and methods to access the SOAP endpoint. The Web API is the more modern and preferred endpoint for new application code, while SOAP endpoint is more for legacy applications and plugin or custom workflow activity development. So both the Web API, which I'm available here with, okay, Web API. So both the Web API and the SOAP endpoints are functionally equivalent, except that SOAP endpoint must be used for development of plugin and custom workflow activities. Although in today's session we would be covering plugin only, but you can explore custom workflows also. So as I told you, plugins are managed classes and it is based on SOAP. So when the event occurs, it passes through a plugin pipeline that consists of three stages: pre-validation, pre-operation, and post-operation. So you just observe here, if your project, new CDS of app project and code you are going to write in .NET assemblies, if it is yes, then code is used in plugin or custom workflow activities. If that is also yes, we can use SDK assemblies. If answer is coming for this particular condition that no, we are not supposed to use plugin, then we can use project in web client. Is like my requirement is project is required to be Windows client, then we can use XRM tooling assemblies. That is also not required, or code is not written in .NET assemblies, then we can go for web API basically. Okay, so when registering a plugin, you must choose which is okay. My bad. We were talking about the event pipeline also. So I was telling you pre-validation, pre-operation, and post-operation. We would understand it little bit more moving ahead. Uh, mm, I think that is good enough to understand this picture. Let's move to the next part. When you perform an action like create a record in an app or create a record using API, a create message is processed by Dataverse. The message is processed in the event pipeline. So on the screen which you are looking at, it is representing the event pipeline that provides a consistent set of stages that the messages goes through. So when I'm talking about messages, messages are nothing. These are the operations which are getting performed on Dataverse tables. Like when you perform an action, just read this line again. Perform an action like create a record in an app or create a record using API. A create message is processed. So what operation you are doing? It is creating a message around it. Okay. So, and when this message is processed, a pipeline is getting triggered. Whole four stages are going to be there. So that provides a consistent set of stages. What is these stages? Actually, each stage expect for the main operation can have plugin attached to it to run custom logic. So basically, suppose before getting or before let the record created in the Dataverse table, I might be interested to perform some additional task. Then I can go for these event pipeline operations. I can make use of these event pipeline. So basically, having a strong understanding of how messages are processed can help you to understand behavior and how and where best to implement custom logic. Okay, so understanding the pipeline is also essential. So let me help you to understand it. So first stage is pre-validation. This pre-validation event occurs first in the pipeline before any security checks are performed. So this pre-validation stage is good, where you are looking for validating the data before making it working. Okay. Then we have pre-operation. Pre-operation is used when you want to change any values of the table prior it being saved. Main operation is the main operation actually, where you are actually doing your job. And then post operation, you can use this event to modify any property of the message before it is returned to the caller. So make sure you want to apply any updates to the corresponding table at this point, as it will trigger another update event. So these are the main stages: pre-validation, pre-operation, then post-operation. Point to be noted here, when you talk about the post-operation can be asynchronous execution also. Let me highlight it correctly, asynchronous execution. Okay, so let's understand a little around more here. So the pre-validation event. So the pre-validation event occurs first in the pipeline before any security checks are performed. So it intended for usage to ensure that the user executing the current transaction has the correct permission needed to perform the intended operation. So as a developer, you can leverage this event to run validation logic and cancel the operation before the transaction occurs. For example, if you configured a run whenever a table is updated, okay, you have the ability to cancel the operation before the update occurs by throwing an exception, invalid plugin execution exception method within your plugin execution logic. So this is the pre-validation event. So let me help you for pre-operation. So we can use this event if you want to change any values of the table prior it being saved. So we are going to see a demonstration where what we are looking for. Let me help you with the case study which we are going to implement in our demonstration. That when a phone number is getting saved into my database, I cannot restrict my user that not to enter any special character because they have their own perspective to enter the phone numbers. Okay, so let's say they are entering the number something like country code, then hyphen, let's say this is country code, then hyphen, then numbers, phone number, separated by, let's say, commas. Okay, so there are some special characters which has been entered by the user, but in your Dataverse database tables you wanted to store only numeric values out of this phone number. So you you are not supposed to restrict your customer, but what you want, you wanted to take care of this task yourself, that before getting it saved, these special characters should be removed, only these number should be taken. So to make it possible, we can create a pre-operation event job, which we can register in the plugin. Text is post-operation. So use this event to modify any properties of the message before it is returned to the caller. So make sure not to apply any updates to corresponding table at this point, as it will be triggered after update event. So, for example, any additional task which you wanted to perform to return. So when data is getting returned to the caller and then you wanted to decorate your output, then you can look for this post operation event. Now let me talk about the execution modes also. So when you are creating a plugin, plugins can be configured to run synchronously or asynchronously depending on what type of pipeline operation you are handling. So basically, if it is a pre-validation or pre-operation, then definitely it has to go in a synchronous mode. However, post-operation supports asynchronous execution mode of plugin as well. So as I told you, synchronous mode, plugins registered in this mode will run as soon as their execution pipeline is stage is reached, and the entire operation will not proceed until the logic has completed execution. Basically, plugin registered in this mode, sorry, if multiple plugins are registered to run against the same pipeline stage, the execution order column will come into the picture. Okay, will determine which one runs first. So synchronous execution would be there. So there would be an execution order column which is there in plugin registration tool, and with that help, it would determine which one need to run first. The asynchronous mode. So the plugin registered in asynchronous mode will be dispatched as system job to asynchronous service which executes their logic after the given operation completes. Okay, so that is the asynchronous mode. Basically, if I talk about, I have already given you the point that asynchronous plugins can be registered for the post operation stage of the event pipeline. Now, let me give you a in more detailing of plugins. So initially I have told you that plugins are .NET assemblies, right? So basically a plugin is an imperative logic that should be used only when declarative process such as business rules, flows, or workflows does not meet your requirement. So these are some um, cases where you can look for the usage of plugins basically, right? So when I'm saying these plugins, these are actually implementing these these particular .NET assemblies are implementing iPlugin interface, and this interface can be found in Microsoft. Let me write it for you. Microsoft dot crm dot sdk dot core assemblies NuGet packages. Okay, these are packages, and the iPlugin interfaces exposes a single method. So basically, from this particular package, you are going to have iPlugin interface, and it's an interface, right? So from this interface, you are going to have a method which is execute method, which you are supposed to override to define your logic, what you wanted to implement, what you wanted to deal with. So these are the scenarios: canceling the event and displaying an error message to the user, making changes to the data in operation, and initiate other actions by using the organization service to add automation. So these are the areas where you can make use of plugin. So although uh, it is always recommended that if you are looking for a logic implementation and it is possible to implement that logic using business rules or flows, or you can say calculated columns, then you should go for those approaches rather than going for plugins. So the recommendation is plugins should be considered as a last resort in many cases. Although plugins are powerful and if well written, highly performant, it, because it's important to minimize the amount of custom imperative logic that you place in your system, because it can affect maintainability, because if you're creating something, you have to maintain it. Updatability also, and there are other stuff as well. When you are doing a, a imperative logic, then you are supposed to take care of it. So that's why plugin should be considered as last option. If you're not able to implement using Dataverse workflow or cloud flows or columns or custom actions, then plugin could be the solution. Otherwise, go for the alternatives options. So these are some pointers which we consider to motivate to use plugins. Otherwise, we would go for alternatives only. So plugins perform better when you consider their performance, capabilities, and ability to run synchronously. So a well-written plugin will always be the most efficient way to apply business logic to the Dataverse. This point, right? However, a poorly written plugin can create a significant negative impact on the performance of your environment. So be sure that you're writing it well. If you talk about its capabilities, so plugin provides several capabilities that are not available with declarative business logic, such as efficient working with external services and code. Okay, nevertheless, Power Automate is rapidly approaching parity with plugins. And last is it has the ability to run synchronously. So if synchronous logic is required for your application, this one, okay, plugin might be required option for you. However, on-demand workflow can also run synchronously and can and should be considered depending on your requirement. So these are some points which you can think of. Here you should go for plugin, but make sure you are taking care of writing well-written plugin so that it would not negatively impact your application. So let's see a quick comparison which would help you to understand. So the circumstances when existing limitations require you to develop plugin to accomplish certain tasks. So these are the pointers you can see. So we have customizations option, we have plugin option, we have client script option as a customization, and we can achieve our logic implementation using workflows also, right? So if we talk about the execution mode, workflows and plugins can be executed synchronously or asynchronously, options depending on which event you are uh, working on. However, client script runs on synchronous mode only. External data accessibility. So workflow will not allow you to access the external data. However, with the help of plugin, you can access external data, and client script also allows you to access the external data, but with some limitations. Now, if we talk about the maintenance part, because workflow is created within the Power Platform, maybe business users create this workflow for their easy activity. So definitely it is maintained by business users. However, plugins and client scripts are the creation of developers. So it is required to be maintained by the developers. So plugins and client scripts are maintained by developers. Now, can run as user based execution. In case of plugin, any licensed user or current user can run plugins, and client script is also user based. When we say run on demand within the workflow, so workflows, yes, it can run on demand, and plugins cannot be run on demand. It is based on events. Even client script is also not allowed to run on demand. Can nest child processes? Workflow, yes. Even plugin can have multiple steps, so therefore child processes can be there, but client script doesn't support that. If we talk about execution stages, yes, in workflow we have before stage and after stage, some messages happening in plugin also and in client script also. And triggers, workflow has these following triggers: create, column change, status change, assign to, owner, or on demand. Plugins support many triggers like create, column change, status change, assign to owner, delete, and along with many other specialized trigger, right? Like pre-validation and pre-operation triggers. However, client script just support two triggers, column change or form load. So I hope this particular picture, this particular table will help you to decide what option you should go for. So let's understand a little bit more around creation of plugins part. So plugins are, as I mentioned, are .NET classes that implement I plugin interface provided by Dataverse SDK assemblies. So here we have I plugin execution context. This gives you access to the message being processed and information about requester. Next is eye tracing service. This gives you access to write trace logs for diagnostic purposes. And it also provides us eye organization service factory. This gives you access to retrieve an organization service for use in accessing data from the plugin. So these all we are getting. And one more thing which I would like to highlight, iPlugin interface provides us execute method, which we have talked about, right? So in that execute method, one parameter is there only, which would be of iService provider type. So this interface has uh, this execute method, okay, and which would provide us I service provider, and this I service provider provides get service method inside it. So basically, what kind of code you can write? Let me write it for you. You would be writing something like this, that this particular context, okay, then you would be getting a service provider dot get service, and then within that, so here you would be doing the typecasting of this type, okay, and within that you would be specifying the type of I, this again, I plugin execution context. This is the kind of code you would be writing to fetch the context, okay, and you would once you have the context, you can refer to its input parameter or output parameter. So input parameter give you access to originating message, and output parameter can give you access to what is being returned to the caller. So we have just seen this particular code that we need to get the context, and when we get this context available, we can perform various operations, right? So event execution. So this particular code we have seen, and when we got that from this context, we can refer to the input parameter and we can refer to a particular table. So event execution pipeline passes information about the current operation in this particular interface, okay. We can refer to the primary entity id, primary entity name, message name, stage, depth, input parameters. So these all options we are able to get, right? Pre-entity images, post-entity images, all these things. So if we go for the very basic scenario, we first of all inherit, we would create a project, and in that project we would have a class, and that class basically inherited from my plugin interface, and in that we would have the execute method. With the help of execute method, I just this is the type of code we would be having in the class. So I plugin interface which is inherited, and in the execute method I have this iService provider, and with the help of iService provider get service method, I would be able to fetch the execution context, right? And once we have the execution context, we can work around, like we can fetch the user ID, we can fetch initiated user IDs. These options are also possible. So let me share you some reference material around the plugins. So here, use plugins to extend business processes. As I mentioned, a plugin is actually a custom event handler that executes in response to a specific event raised during processing of Microsoft Dataverse operations, right? So we have learned around that. If you refer to this link, you would be able to find some more details about the plugin. Just see this. I have told you iPlugin interface, it provides execute method. So within the execute method, your custom code can cancel the current processing pipeline operation, optionally display an error message to the user, make changes to the business data being processed, invoke the data operation, connect to the external system, pass information to another downstream plugin in the same pipeline, and many more. Okay. So when to use plugin, it is recommended you should go through these articles also. It would give you more detail around your plugin requirement. Okay, one more thing which I would like to show you. With the help of that, I have created my demonstration as well. This is write and register a plugin. So if you go to this, uh, just a moment. Yeah, you can refer to this particular code. I've used this type of code in my demonstration as well. So you can refer to these steps. So if I just show you one thing, let me just, yeah, here, signing. You can sign in. Like once your project is ready, you have to sign the assembly. Okay. SNK file it would create actually. So just look at it, register a new step and then test. So these are the reference materials you can refer to. Okay, let me show you this. Write a plugin. So when we are saying write a plugin, we would be talking about iPlugin interface, right? So as I mentioned, you can create plugin through tools for Visual Studio or Power Platform CLI. So here you can look for quick start article also, or you can look for pack tool, PRT tool. So during the demonstration, I have actually used this tool to initiate my plugin registration tool. Okay, so you can refer to this link. Let me just show you this also. So this is the command which you can use to initiate to launch your plugin registration tool. And there are some other commands, update and the all. Okay, so if you go for pack tool list, it would just list out all the tools. Here it is iPlugin interface, execute method, then pass configuration data to your plugin. So get service method. This is tracing services. And we can put all the things together like this. Okay, here early bound types also you can make use of. This is the .NET framework we are using, 4.6.2. This is the assembly NuGet package, which is plugin based upon. Okay, so you can look at these options here. So if you look at debugger plugin, you can use you can test your assembly, you can use tracing, you can use plugin profiler. So just have a look, test your assembly, use tracing, and use plugin profilers. So these are some reference links which you can refer to. Even error handling is also you can create. The exception which is getting generated is invalid plugin execution exception. Okay, organization service generate service fault exception. So what you can do, you can create a try and catch mechanism inside your code to deal with the errors as well. So you can see here try block is there, catch is with basis on fault exception, and we are throwing this error. Okay, or we can have a generic exception catch block with the information. So these are the ways to have the error handling mechanism in your code. You can even make use of tracing services. You can make tracing log off or have exception or all. These these additional features are also possible. So the ways to develop a plugin. There are two ways to develop a plugin. Either you can use this CLI command, pack plugin in it, and it would create the required classes. Or what you can do, you can create yourself a project. Okay. You need to have a plugin abstract base class. You can use Power Platform tools for Visual Studio, and with that you can make a project which is of .NET class library, and in that you would implement that previously discussed logic code, and you can build a DLL file. Now let's see a quick demonstration to build a plugin. So let me start with this. So I'm opening the make.powerapps.com. So first of all, I'll show you the output. Okay. So for that perspective, I'm going to my app. I have already implemented it. So I'm showing you that what I'm going to do. So I'm playing my application. So I have my model-driven application readily available. So if I'm going to create a new record, and if the case study which I have already talked about, I have implemented it already. So I'm going to create a record here. Now in the phone, business phone, I'm going to enter some additional character, not just numbers. And when I just click on save, before getting it saved, it is going to remove these unwanted characters automatically. And I have done it using the plugin. Just see, additional characters has been removed, right? So I hope it is clear. So this is the same scenario which we are going to implement again. So let me save and close. Even you can go for these records also which are existing. Okay, let me open the Visual Studio 2019, create a new project. I'm going to search for my project, class library project. So here you can search for the template for the project. I'm searching for class library actually, which would be of .NET framework. Please make a note of it. You should be selecting the correct project, otherwise it would not work. So I'm selecting class library with .NET framework, C# based. Next. So here I'm going to give the project name. You can have location decided also, where you wanted to save. I'm creating a new folder to save my project. And make sure you are selecting the correct .NET Framework library, that is 4.6.2. Create. So my class file is ready. But this is not that particular abstract class which we are looking for, because we need to have iPlugin interface here, right? Um, Now let me open the solution explorer. So select the project and right click and go for manage NuGet packages, because we need to have that library. So go to browse, search for Microsoft .crm SDK core assemblies. Select that and install. Latest version, don't change the versions. Install it. Click on I accept and let it install. So you can see references are getting added. So it's done. No error, no warning even. Let's close that. So if you see here, again in the installed, you were able to see, right? Now, what I'm going to do, instead of having this particular class, I'm going to create another class. So you can make use of this class also. You can do the changes in this particular code also. But I'm more interested to create a new class inside the project, and it would help you how to have additional, like how to add new class. Okay, so that approach I'm going to follow. Let me do that in a moment. It's hanged, I believe. Yeah, right click and I'm deleting it. It's deleted. Now select the project, again right click, then add class. Here you can see class, and here you can give the class name. So I'm giving the name pre-operation format phone create and update. So pre-operation format phone create update is my class name. Having a better name, because so that I can easily identify this particular class. Click on add. So as I mentioned, you can use that previous class also, but right now I am using this particular version. So here I would include the necessary namespaces. Just a moment. I have my code. I'm just looking for that. Okay, so I have included the namespaces and I have included my code, the whole code. So this particular code is actually going to format the number. Okay, so you can see here regex dot replace phone number which I'm fetching from entity telephone 1. So here on the top, you can see execute method. This is a similar code which we have seen in the presentation as well. So context parameter contains key target. If it is not, we are throwing that exception, although we have not implemented the try and catch block, but you can have that as well. And here regex we are using on the telephone 1 attribute. So just see here. Execute method, iService provider is being provided. And now once it is done, I would compile the project. It would create a DLL file. Now next is I am opening this plugin registration tool, and how I open, I have actually opened the Power Platform CLI and I executed the command that is spark tool PRT. It would open. Then create a connection, and once connection is created, you have done it earlier also, register new assembly. Now you need to look for that file which you have created. So DLL file I'm looking for, which would be available in bin debug. I think I have not compiled it. Let me check. Okay, build solution. It succeeded. Okay, one more thing which you should be doing it, creating a SNK file. You need to sign in the assembly. So you can see now DLL is visible. Okay, here it is visible. For that particular class. Then register selected plugin. So it is registered. You can see one assembly register, one plugin register. Okay. You can see here. Now we need to add the steps where we wanted to perform this uh, job. So basically, this particular job we wanted to perform the replacement of the phone number with the number format phone. So we are going to register a new step on our plugin activity. So I have already selected my remove character uh, plugin, which I have just registered. Again, it got hanged. Okay. So here I have selected message create, primary entity contact. So I have registered a create of contact. So again selected the remove character plugin, register new step. I'm interested for update also. On entity contact, and below you would select the attribute for which attribute you wanted to perform. So you need to just select the business phone. Okay. You can see business phone is telephone 1. Then we would be selecting the event pipeline stage here. So it's pre-operation. Okay, register new step. And this way we have created the plugin, and you have already seen how to test that plugin, right? I have created a model driven application based on the contact table and nothing else. I have used that form, and using that form I have tested my application. So you can refer to this link also, which is on my screen right now, and you can try your own demonstration. Whole demonstration you can try for your practical. And after this particular exercise, there is one more exercise available if you are interested in, that is custom workflow. I hope it has given you some clarity around this. So now let me give you some details around the code um, which we have used in the example also. So input parameters, the input parameters are contained in execution context inputs parameter collection and are of type entity. So this property enables you to see what tables values were presented to the plugin prior to the implementation of a given operation. Okay, for example, if you want to validate your data and prevent it from being saved if validation is not successful, then you can make use of it. So what steps you can follow? Register your plugin to run on pre-validation stage, on create or update of the table that you wanted to validate, and then validate data in your plugin by reading the values from input parameter collection. On create, you want to retrieve the target collection, and if it is having any problem, you can throw an invalid plugin execution exception if the provided data is not valid. So this is the way you can make use of this input parameter. Next is output parameters. Output parameters are contained also in execution context output parameter collection, and these are also of type table. Output parameters are only provided after the given operation has occurred. Okay, And as such, you will only be able to use this collection when you are handling event post operation stage. So for example, if you wanted to change the values that are returned by the operation, you can modify them by conducting these steps which are on screen. So register your plugin in run to run on post operation stage on create or update of the table, and update the data in your plugin by editing the values from the output parameter collection. Okay, note that on create you will want to retrieve the target collection. So again, with the help of target, you would be able to refer to it. One thing which is important to just to know at least, so when registering a plugins to run against the event framework, you can provide an immutable copy or snapshot of the data. This is ideal, especially when you need to reference values of the data before or after an operation has occurred. For example, for logging or custom auditing purpose. So while you are retrieving table values by using organization context from within a plugin by means of a retrieve request, using table images to conduct this task is much more efficient and highly advisable. So we have pre and post entity images, so which allows plugin to code reference columns not in the operation, pre and post values, and prevent the need to retrieve a row as first step in plugin. Another aspect around the plugin is debug and troubleshooting a plugin. So we have already learned about eye tracing service, right? We can make use of this eye tracing service to trace the execution of plugin, how it is performing. Okay, we can even raise eye plugin execution context to display message to the user. We have plugin trace logs available, which we can make use of. Just a moment, yeah, trace logs. We have system jobs for asynchronous plugins. We have plugin profilers. Okay, analyze plugin performance with analytics in Power Platform Admin Center. Power Platform Admin Center also provide you this feature. You can set the timeout limit like 2-minute limit, and you can add error handling. So once you have created your plugin and you want to validate whether it is performing well or not, so these are the areas where you can troubleshoot and debug your plugin. So when you do your lab exercise, in the lab exercise there are some activities around that as well, so you would be able to explore these debugging features also. So make sure you're doing that lab, the plugin lab, which is there. Okay, so now we are talking about optimizing the plugin performance. So one thing which we have already learned, that well-written plugin is good, right? So how to have the optimized plugin performance? So first option says filter the columns to trigger plugin, so only run when required. Okay, that is first option. Second option says you use pre and post images to need to retrieve rows as first step. So you can make use of pre and post images to make your plugin performance better. Third point says do not register plugin on any table. You can minimize operations as 2-minute limit, so it would be doing the activity faster. Then check the depth of the transaction and abort if necessary, and handle all the errors. Although in the demonstration I have not handled the error, but it is recommended you should handle all the errors. You can even configure a custom API message. So you can create own message in Dataverse API based tables, custom APIs. You can use custom API request parameters can be used, and custom API response property can be used, which can be global or bound to a table. And you can create it with using either Power Apps Maker portal or plugin registration tool or using code. Although in the session we are not covering in depth on this particular topic, but yes, it is giving you the option that you can configure a custom API message also. So to develop a plugin that implements a custom API, what you need to do basically add the plugin to perform logic when custom API is called, and create code just like you would any other plugin. And in addition, register the assembly, select the assembly custom API plugin type in the custom API record, and do not register a step. So what I can do, I can share you a link where you can see some more details around this custom API. Let me share that for you. So you can see here, write a plugin for your custom API. So this is the reference link which you can refer to. So writing a plugin to implement the main operation for your custom API isn't different from writing any other kind of plugin, except that you do not use a plugin registration tool to set a specific step. So that's why we are not saying register steps. Okay. You need to know what name of the message, name and type of the request parameters and response parameters. So here also we have input parameters and output parameters. You can see here a sample code. So we are having plugin, execute. We are including the tracing service also this time. We are getting the context, right? Then from this context, we are looking for a message which we are interested in, and then string parameter we are checking on. If it is null, then what we wanted to do. If it is not null, what we wanted to do, we wanted to reverse the characters of that string. If there is any error, this particular code would be executed. Okay, so this is a sample code which you can try. So this link you can make use of to work around, like create and use custom APIs. Even this also a good option, I would say, create your own message if you are interested in. If you wanted to create your own message, you can create. Okay, I hope this link would help you. This is the link which we have seen actually. Custom process actions with code. No, not this one. This one, my bad. This one we have seen. Create a custom API. Okay.